One of the worst sounds on the saxophone is whiny high notes. Those are painful. And unfortunately, there are a lot of beginner and intermediate saxophone players that fall into the category of whiny high note players. But I do have some good news. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you 3 really simple fixes that will turn those notes into crystal clear high notes. So let's get started. One of the first and biggest mistakes that saxophone players make with high notes is they try to sneak into them. In other words, they don't start with a full stream of air. They just kind of sneak into that high note, hoping that it might just pop out, kind of like this. As you can hear in the beginning, I don't have enough air, and then as I blow more air, I have a more supported airstream, the note starts to sound. You want to start the note with a full airstream. If you sneak into those high notes, they're never going to sound good. They're always going to sound whiny and unsupported. It would be talking like this, where I'm not starting my words with the full support. I'm kind of sneaking into it. Same thing on your saxophone. You want to have full support from the very first note. So if you are tonguing that note, you want a full airstream that is released by your tongue. If you are slurring into a high note, then keep that air going. Don't back off, which would sound like this. Keep that airstream going and supported so that your high notes sound fat and full. Now let's talk about your embouchure when it comes to high notes. In general, on the saxophone, you don't mess around with your embouchure that much. It just pretty much is what it is, except when you're playing really low notes and really high notes. When you're playing low notes, you're going to loosen your embouchure, and that's going to let those low notes come out a lot easier. And when you're playing high notes, you're going to tighten up your embouchure, and that is going to make the high notes easier. Now, the big mistake about tightening up your embouchure is oftentimes sax players think about tightening this way. In other words, from the top of the mouthpiece to the reed, squeezing up and down. That is not the way you want to tighten up. You want to tighten up by bringing your corners in. So you're almost making this face. I know, cute, right? So you want to bring those corners in, but just a little bit. You don't have to super tighten up. You don't have to squeeze your embouchure. You just want to tighten up just a little bit to give you a little bit more support as you are playing these higher notes. So I'm going to start off playing these notes supported with a little bit tighter of an embouchure so you can see it and hear what it sounds like. Do you see how these corners are in? Like I'm almost squeezing in just a little bit. Now this time I'm going to play with a looser embouchure as I go up, and you're going to hear that these notes just don't sound focused. Like they still came out, but they sounded a little flat and less focused. If you tighten up your corners just a little bit, you're going to have a lot more support for those notes, and they're going to come out and sound a whole lot better. So tighten up your embouchure, thinking about the corners going in. Before I go on, there is one other thing that I want to mention that can completely train wreck high notes, and that is the amount of mouthpiece that you are taking in. So for the amount of mouthpiece you want to take in, you want to close one eye, take a look at your mouthpiece from the side. You're going to see where the reed hits the mouthpiece. There's going to be a gap up above there. You want to put your bottom lip right where the reed is hitting the mouthpiece, and then your top teeth on top of the mouthpiece. If you do that, you're going to have enough reed vibrating and you're going to get a good sound. If you don't, if you're taking in too little, you're going to have a really squeezed off sound. This is what it sounds like if I take in too little mouthpiece and try to play high notes. This is going to be painful. So if your high notes sound really squeezed off and you just can't get any air into your saxophone for the high notes, that means there's a really good chance that you're not taking in quite enough mouthpiece. And when you're playing your high notes, you're going to really hear it. It's just going to squeeze those notes off and they're going to sound terrible. So make sure that you are taking in enough mouthpiece and those notes will pop right out. Now, let's talk about the real game changer. This is such a game changer. I've taught this in so many lessons. I teach this in my sax school in the sax basics part, and it's always a game changer, and it immediately makes everyone's high notes sound better. And that is making sure that your tongue is in the correct position. So when you are going up into those high notes, you want your tongue to raise up a little bit into what I call the E position. And I call it the E position because that is where you want your tongue. When you say the word E, it brings your tongue up really high in your mouth, and that gets you in the correct position for those high notes to pop right out. So say the word E, E, and pay really close attention to how high up your tongue is. That is what you want for your high notes. If you have your tongue in the E position, those notes will come out really, really easily. If my tongue is not up in the E position, say it's in the A position. So if I say the word A, my tongue is flat, the notes will still probably come out, but they're going to be really out of tune and whiny. And if I'm in the ah position, which is the low note position, if I have my tongue down really low, I'll just get furp sounds. The notes won't even come out. That doesn't work at all. Your tongue position is super important, especially when it comes to high notes. For a full disclosure, if you are a beginner or you have not worked on high notes very much, in the beginning it's going to be a little bit tough because you have to build up your lip muscle. To get those high notes to come out crisp and clean and crystal clear, you're going to have enough lip muscle for that to happen. Now, the good news is you can work on it and get it down in just a couple weeks if you do the correct exercises. But if you are a beginner or brand new to high notes, even if you do all the stuff that I just told you about, they might not come out crystal clear because you need to build up that muscle. So now I'm going to show you 2 exercises you can do that will help build up your lip muscle really quick. The first exercise you want to work on is a scale pattern. So a scale pattern is just a pattern that is based on scale degrees. So for this first one, we're going to do 1, 2, 3, 2, 1. All that means is you're going to play the first note of the major scale, the second note of the major scale, the third note of the major scale, then back to the second, then back to the first. We are going to start using the B flat major scale because that's going to take us up to the palm key D. So the 3 notes are going to be B flat, C, and D. Take a listen to it. Then go up a half step. So now we're going to be in the key of B major, and your 3 notes will be B, C sharp, D sharp. Now I'm just doing each one time. You might want to repeat this pattern 2 or 3 times. So I'll do this pattern again in B flat 2 or 3 times so you can hear what I'm talking about. Now in this case, I'm tonguing the first note and slurring the rest of the notes. You can also tongue all of the notes. I would start off slurring it, and then once you get that down, then work on tonguing. Don't necessarily go back and forth in the very beginning. So then the next pattern would be in C. So your 3 notes would be C, D, and E. And then the last one would be C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, which of course is the same as palm key F. Now, the higher up you go, the harder it's going to be. You're going to want to make sure you're squeezing in those corners just a little bit tighter. If you work on this pattern for just 2 or 3 weeks, you are going to see and hear a drastic improvement in the quality of your high notes. The next exercise you want to work on for crystal clear high notes on demand. What I mean by that is you're not working your way into them with setup notes. You're just jumping right to the palm key note, is by doing octave jumps. So these are going to be a good bit more difficult, but once you get these down, you are going to completely own your palm key notes. So all you want to do is play a middle D, so D, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 with the octave key, and then the octave up, which is the palm key D. So you're getting really comfortable jumping from the middle D up to the high D. You're going to have to do some stuff with your tongue. You're going to go from more of an A position into the E position, and you're also going to have to tighten up the corners of your embouchure just a little bit so that these notes pop right out. So I'm going to play middle D, high D, back to middle D, back to high D. That is a great exercise to get comfortable with these high notes and get them out on demand. Now, of course, you're going to do them with the rest of your palm key notes. So next, I'm going to do it on middle E flat up to high E flat. Then E. Now, when you're playing that low note, it's going to set it up so that you know what the high note is supposed to sound like. That's why we're doing octave jumps instead of jumping by a third or a fifth or something like that. Giving your ears the cheat code of, oh, this is what this note sounds like. We just have to get it out an octave higher will make it a whole lot easier. Now, of course, you want to do this on all of your palm key notes. Like I said earlier, this exercise might take a little bit longer to master, but once you get this down, your palm keys are no longer going to be an issue and you're going to have crystal clear high notes. Thanks for taking the time to check out this tutorial. If you'd like to dive deeper into my saxophone world, come check me out at the Scott Paddock Sax School.